external success is way easier than internal success, way easier to measure, way easier to get quickly, right? We can manipulate a lot of things around us to find some external success. But what we find is those same leaders that look successful are often the same ones that go home and like metaphorically kick the dog.
You are listening to 5 a.m. podcast. Your morning motivation starts here.
Welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast. Every leader knows the heavy toll of carrying absolute responsibility. Outwardly, you're hitting those targets, you're managing teams, ticking those boxes, and the KPIs. Don't want to forget about all the three-letter stuff we get to do. But inwardly, you might be carrying quiet exhaustion, maybe a brutal inner critic, like we can all be, or that nagging sense of imposter syndrome. Our guest today is an expert in helping high performers break free from that survival trap. With a background that spans a decade in manufacturing corporate leadership, a decade in pastoral ministry, and co-hosting the Brimstone Coaching podcast, Kurt knows exactly what happens behind those closed doors. Kurt, welcome.
Hey, Michael, thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
It's good to be here too. You know, in preparation for this conversation, I was considering your name, Brimstone, and that part of your name, I should say. And I was thinking of Dante's Inferno. And some of us could feel like we have this gate that we have to pass through, whether it's Monday through Friday or some of those meetings, and we just think, oh man, Dante's Inferno. But tell us about the story behind the name
I'm
Brimstone.
so glad you asked, because this is a topic every podcast we go on. And it turns out we're not marketers, and we should have maybe thought longer and harder about our name. But the brimstone comes from the brimstone butterfly. This is a species of butterfly. And as you know, butterflies are the only living creature that literally transforms, that becomes a different creature throughout its life. We believe that transformation is possible in our lives, even today. So we wanted to capture that possibility of transformation. And the brimstone butterfly is the longest living butterfly. So not just a transformed creature, but it lives the longest of any butterfly in the butterfly stage. So it's important to us to kind of capture this idea that we can actually literally transform our lives today.
When people come to you, they probably don't say, Kurt, I need to transform my life. I feel like I'm in a cocoon or a chrysalis right now. But people come to you, and oftentimes, what is their first comments to you about maybe what they think the problem is, or maybe they don't even know?
Most people don't even know, which is normal. I didn't know when I started doing my own work. Most people come and say, I don't love the results I'm getting in my life or my leadership, or it's not sustainable and I don't know what to do, which again, I think is natural. Most of us do what we know how to do. And if we could be transformed with what we know today, we already would. So much of the conversation begins with, this just isn't sustainable, or this isn't thriving, or this isn't how I want to live my life or lead in my roles. I need help changing my outcomes.
Yeah, that's right. Help changing our outcomes, because it really is true that we don't know what we don't know. How do you shed some light, or maybe you can share a story of a time where you were actually able to not only turn the light on and see the cockroaches scurry away, but actually breathe some life into someone's career they
thanks
thought
for
was
asking it
over?
like that. I think that's a great question. We do think about shedding light, or we'll say, holding a mirror up for people. We as coaches believe that it's our job to ask the right question at the right time to help people get unstuck. I don't believe that I have the answer that I can give to you to direct you how to get unstuck. But I do think I can help hold up a mirror to say, what about this? What about this? What about this? I coach a nonprofit leader who I've coached for probably going on about 1.5 years right now. And we have worked a great deal on self-awareness and increasing that amount that we do know. You said there's a lot we don't know that we don't know, 100%. So we do a lot of self-work to help people know a little more about themselves. And not that long ago, this person that I was coaching via Zoom leaned into the Zoom camera and said, you know what? I think I've been equating my self-worth with my performance. And it was this
Mm,
like light bulb moment, which I think I probably knew well before this person did, but
right.
they had to come to it. They had to find it, uncover it.
Yeah.
And then the next sentence was, is it possible that I've been doing this for 40 years? And again, like, yes, it is possible. In fact, it's probably likely that you've been doing this for 40 years. And that awareness piece, that sort of aha moment is the beginning
Mhm.
of now having some agency to taking steps to disconnecting self-worth and performance.
Because we live so often in a spot where it's stick and carrot,
Yes.
whether it's teachers or parents or bosses. Can you talk a little bit about that stick and carrot idea of how do people break that mindset of I don't need to be punished and I don't need to be
Yeah.
rewarded with food?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you said it, like, we are ingrained with this, this sort of Western, even like Western education, from
Mm-hmm.
grade school on, like, we are just programmed to have this thing dangle in front of us and we get a reward. It's just so common with the people we work with. It's common in me, right? One of
Yes.
the things we do first then is like I worked with this client to say, why do you think that is, or do you know when that started? And we try to kind of work backwards, and it's a long, slow process, but we try to work backwards to see like when did this begin, or when do you
Mm,
remember this showing up in places? We
yeah.
use a phrase that says everywhere we go there we are, so we ask the question then that says where else do you see this, like he would see it in his job. Where else do you see it? Do you see it with your family? Do you see it in your volunteer roles? Where else does it show up? And are there common threads that we can start to pull apart to say where is your self-worth, right? Like where do you want it to be? Where do you hope that you find it? And can you take some steps
Hmm.
to put it there, to find it there? And
Yeah.
disconnect and disrupt that sort of way of being that they've held on to for years.
Yes. And so then that makes me think of when I was in college and in my degree program and some of the counseling courses I had to take. And one of the things people would talk about is, and some people would go on and on about this,
Sure.
is your earliest childhood memory. And I'd be like,
Yeah.
I don't know. But you were asking your client to say, let's think back to where it started. So for somebody, maybe like myself or someone else, what is the importance of thinking back to that earliest childhood memory?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I'm not sure that I would go as far to say it's critical. I think it's really important. We deal a lot with the idea of little t trauma. My coaching partner and I, we are not clinical psychologists. We're not licensed therapists. So we know that our lane is not in big T trauma. A lot of people have big T trauma, catastrophic events that shape our lives.
Yes.
But all of us have little T trauma. All of us have moments in our first formation, whether it's grade school to high school, where we learn how to see the world or we learn things about the world. One of the things that I remember learning about the world was that it's risky to look incompetent, or it's risky
Mm,
to make a mistake in front of peers. That for me was something that held on for years and years and years that I would have never known was happening in the moment. Like as a middle schooler, our brains aren't able to function, abstract thought processes. So we don't know that this is happening, but we make what we call protective promises in those moments, to where we promise ourselves we'll keep ourselves safe, and then that carries into adulthood. Now, here's what I would say as to why it's not critical. We do a lot of work with people where we say, like, think back as far as you can, right? Or think back to like the last time this happened, and where might that come from in your past. A lot of people say what you say, Michael, of like, I don't
mhm.
know. And that's
Yeah.
okay, but I think we can trace it back bit by bit. And I think what my experience has been, what our clients experience, is that slowly one piece of awareness triggers another piece of awareness, and then that piece of awareness triggers another one. So I don't know
Mhm.
that it's critical to be able to trace something all the way back, nor do I think it's time effective to do the work we do. I do think it's important. I think most of these things tie back to that first formation time, but I'm not sure we need it to make progress, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. That does make sense. And I know I can think back in my own life, and I'm sure others listening will probably agree with this, where you remember something bad or unpleasant, perhaps traumatic
Yeah.
happening, and then you assign blame in
Yes.
that moment.
Yes.
And then later on in life, we find out, oh my goodness, I've been blaming this gal or this guy for these
Yeah.
decades and over my 5-year-old vision of something happening.
Yes.
How can that adult uh, who thinks back and has this revelation, oh my goodness, I've been a unpleasant individual, and maybe it started when I was 5 years
Yeah.
old and the situation happened.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so common, Michael. It's so common because it's in those moments where we assign meaning to those things. And our
Mm.
nervous systems are really good at like God gave us really, really complex nervous systems that keep us safe. And that 5-year-old in that example needs to be safe, right? Needs to have
Mhm.
some sort of protection to get through 6, 7, 8, 9, get through middle school. Like those are
Yeah,
important
right.
and they're necessary, but they're not necessary as adults. But our nervous systems don't know, like, oh, Kurt's an
Yeah.
adult now. Kurt doesn't need to be protected like 5-year-old Kurt needed to be protected. So
Mhm.
we believe that those moments when we're 5 or 8 or 15, those moments create these sort of ways of seeing the world that our nervous system knows, hey, I'm going to do these
Yeah.
things to stay safe. And then we just keep doing them, like Sir Isaac Newton might say, emotion remains an object till it's acted upon from an outside force. We think those ways
Yes.
of being just continue until we do something different. And what we try to help people see is, like what are we doing because of that moment when we're 5? Like what patterns
Mhm.
of behavior have we adopted since then? And we try to ask, like, is that beneficial and aligned with who and how we want to be?
Yeah, that makes sense, and a whole lot of stuff will stem from that,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna I'm gonna make an assumption that you and I both know because of our backgrounds and communities, faith
Mhm.
communities and things like that. You may know a lot of people that homeschool, and
I
I know
don't
a
actually,
lot of
Michael.
people. Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay. It's kind of a thing around my
Okay.
parts of the world, and sometimes I think it's a form of protection,
Mm.
and it's almost like, "I'm sorry, child, you need a few more jackasses in your life," and you know where you find them is school.
Yes, I do know that. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So sometimes it feels like, thinking back to those experiences, lessons learned, we can either have the mindset where I'm gonna be thriving or I'm gonna be surviving.
Mhm.
And we're talking about those childhood years, but these questions are even there in those younger
Yeah.
years in
Yeah.
school. And so if we fast forward now to the business
Yeah.
leader, we're still surrounded by the unpleasant ones and the pleasant
Yeah.
ones and all those other named people, or maybe we won't name any of them. I'm sure every listener is like, oh, I know who he's
Yes.
talking about. It's a Janet or that Mike or Mark, whatever his name
Sorry,
was.
Mikes.
Yes, and Marks and Janets, we love you all. You're wonderful. So, if we think of the business
Yeah.
leader who, you say that most leaders, they're not actually thriving.
Mhm.
They're just surviving. They're quietly that fake it till you make it. Oh, I hope nobody notices my inadequacies. How does our current corporate and organizational culture actively reward maybe this exhausting performance?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michael. You mentioned the stick and carrot earlier, right?
Yes.
There is
Yeah.
this reality that we get the behavior we reward, and right now culturally, like Western culturally, there's huge reward for exhausting ourselves, right? This idea that I'm the first person in, the last person out, I blow past my
Mhm.
boundaries, I give of
Yes.
myself more than I may have to give, the detriment of myself or my family. This is rewarded with promotions. It's rewarded with salary upgrades and promotions and bonuses. I do think it's shifting. Like I do think there is a leadership conversation happening over the last 10 years that says, the short term, yes, the short term hustle and grind is probably great for bottom line, but
Mhm.
longevity, like there is a cost to the hustle culture. There's a cost to the stick and carrot that I do think now companies are starting to see. Like, man, if we could keep these leaders for an extra 10 years, or if we can keep people from
Mhm.
burning out, that's actually a benefit. So I'm happy about that.
Huge.
But it's still
Mm.
all too common that we reward with the stick and carrot. We reward just blowing past boundaries and giving up of self. And
Mhm.
God gave us limits, and I think limits
That's right.
are a gift. And oftentimes, what we're rewarding is ignoring our limits.
Yeah. And there is this phrase, and I will Michaelify it for everyone, of that fear brings
Mm,
obedience, but loyalty brings
mm,
legacy. And I know it's very expensive to onboard an
yeah,
employee once we got rid of
yeah,
somebody. And it also, part of that expense is the amount of time it takes for a business to actually turn a profit on that
yeah,
individual. I could take 1 or 2 years. And instead, if we burn people out
yeah,
and or good people leave, can you talk a little bit about, seeing as how we're talking about the stick and
yeah,
carrot, so that fear that brings obedience, but yet loyalty is a completely different quality,
yeah,
and that will build legacies. Can you
yeah.
talk about those 2 differences?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people, especially in the West, will hold this mental model of leadership that says the leader or the manager, or super, whatever word we want to use, that person carries authority, and that authority is what makes them a leader. That that
Mhm,
then authority equals having the answer at the drop of a hat. It means being certain. It means being cool under fire. It means never showing sweat. Right, that to me drives a level of fear for every person that is tasked with following that person. I say tasked because I'm not sure any of us would follow that person without a
mhm.
mandate to follow that person. Uh,
Right.
and I think what that fear does, it creates cultures that make it nearly impossible to innovate, nearly impossible to be curious, nearly impossible to hold our
Mhm,
limits or our boundaries. So, really, a cascading effect of the all the negatives that we see in that sort of leadership just cascade down on everyone like a weight, like
mhm,
a heavy waterfall, if you will. The opposite, though, what you said, I love this idea of loyalty. We think about leadership as being a position where anybody can be a leader as long as someone's following them. Like, the only
yeah,
definition of a leader is that you have somebody following you, and that's as simple as we can make it. Now, I believe that if I have someone following me, they could leave at any moment, right? At any moment, if I'm
mhm,
leading poorly, I could metaphorically turn around and they could be gone. That leads me then to consider how I'm leading, consider how I'm showing up, consider how I'm creating a space where they can follow in such a way that's sustainable over time, that respects boundaries, that gives space to be heard, that gives space for innovation and creativity. I think that really is the difference. I think fear says, follow me or else. And that loyalty
mm,
says, I'm going to create a space where you're going to want to follow me.
yes, absolutely. And I love the idea of these 2 different paradigms, because I think back in my working career, how many bosses I had, or we'll say
Yeah.
leaders I had, where fear was their primary skill
Yeah.
set,
Yeah.
as the primary skill set. And so you're obedient because you don't want the hammer to
Yeah.
drop on you. You saw what happened to Jim last
Yeah.
week. And so what that, to me, what that did was, I gotta find a way out. I hate living in
Yeah.
fear. I hate being stressed about when I'm gonna get called on.
Yeah.
But then you have these other bosses that, man, I had this one boss when I was in college. His name was Mike. And what a guy. That guy could inspire
Yeah.
us. We were just a bunch of college students. Most of us were out of high school, and he could just inspire
Yeah.
us. And he built this sense of loyalty. And I think most of us would have done X, Y, and Z, and then 25 other things if Mike would have asked us
Yeah.
to. For the person that's leading and they say, I wonder if I'm the fearmonger. And I'd like to generate loyalty instead of oppression. Is it possible to work on that, to change how we have stick and carrot, but to lay those down and say, I want to build a legacy with my staff or company?
100%. I mean, I think it's very hard. But I think it is possible. I mean, I have to believe it's possible. I would say probably in my own leadership, I've made the shift. I think I am not super old, but I'm old enough where my early years of leading were like, this is what leaders were. You led by
Uh-huh.
authority. You led because you have a title, right? So I've
Mm.
seen it in my own leadership as well. I think here's what I want to say about this. I had a leader supervisor over me for a number of years that would say, you just can't let your people see you bleed. And I
Mm.
remember thinking like, that sounds really weird. And
Yeah.
like I know the metaphor, right? He wasn't actually bleeding, but I was young enough where I knew it didn't sound quite right, but I was trying to learn and absorb. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna listen to that. And I think that might be the first area to begin to make the shift is to say, I'm gonna lean into vulnerability just a little bit. And I know vulnerability gets kind of a bad name in leadership, and I always give people permission to use discernment on how much vulnerability is necessary or appropriate. But I think some level
Mhm.
of uh, real authentic vulnerability from a leader is a great place to start to say, I'm going to begin to make a shift away from kind of the iron fist leader into a leader that
Mhm.
says, I know you can walk away from me, but I want you to stay with me.
Yeah, and I'll give you a reason to
Yeah.
stay. And I think that if leaders can show that vulnerability, then all of a sudden you don't actually want to cause
Yeah.
problems for your staff. You don't
Yeah.
want to be that miserable
Yeah.
fearmonger because then you're thinking, oh man, I'm giving these guys a story if they're ever being vulnerable to remember who I was. And I think then another part of this, the fear side of that equation, actually lends itself to the hustle and the fake it till you make it. And so when a leader relies on that fake it till you make it model, the spray tan booth for our leadership
Yeah.
qualities or
Yeah.
something
I
like
like
that,
that.
they yeah, thank you. They they often look incredibly successful on the outside, like
Yeah.
one of those Cadbury chocolates that are something that you get at Christmas time. You just don't realize that somebody came and hollowed out the inside and put it back in the box. What is that hidden internal cost they end up paying down the road?
Yeah, I mean, it's so steep, Michael. I mean, I think exhaustion is a cost. I think burnout is a cost. I think sustainability is a cost. What we see so often is people who would even say they're successful, right? This sort of external success. It's so tempting. It's so tempting, and
Mhm.
and frankly, external success is way easier than internal success. Way easier to measure. Way easier to get
Mm.
quickly, right? We can manipulate a lot of things around us to find some external success. But what we find is those same leaders that look successful are often the same ones that go home and like metaphorically kick the dog. That
Yeah, right.
that find a way that find an outlet like this exhaustion, this frustration. It's going to come out somewhere, and if it's not coming out in ways that are healthy, if it's not being expressed throughout our days, it's going to find a release point, and that's always our concern is like, where is that release point? People going through leadership and going through their work days, whatever it is, just grinding and hustling with no reflection, no pause, no vent for the
Mhm.
pressure throughout their day. Like it is going to find a way out. It usually comes out in ways that are not preferred.
Yes. And if we think to the silver screen, which I've been apt to do, you think the donkey goes home to the
Yeah.
dragon and the kind ogre goes home to the
Uh huh.
princess.
Uh huh. I like that.
So yeah, there is that reflection of well, or that Chinese proverb perhaps of men and women, of course, are like teacups. When they're bumped, what's
Mm,
inside comes
yeah.
out. And I it seems to me like what we're kind of drilling down to is what's inside our teacup
Yeah.
because we're constantly getting bumped.
Yeah.
And somebody might be saying, I'm realizing that when someone's bumping my teacup, I'm I'm actually getting to that point where I don't like what's coming out.
Yeah. Yeah, we like the analogy. I say we, sorry, my coaching partner and I, we like this analogy of a beach ball held underwater. Have you ever tried to hold a beach ball under the water of a pool?
I Yes, I
It's
have.
difficult, right? And you get it underwater and your hand is like constantly rocking back and forth trying to keep this ball underwater. And the ball in this analogy is our emotions, there are frustration, They're all the things that we need to set aside to hustle and grind and be successful on the outside. And we hold that
Hmm.
ball underwater. And what's true about the ball in this analogy is that I have to work real hard to keep it under there. And the further down I push it, the harder it is to keep it there. But also, the further down I push it, the more it's going to splash when it comes out of the water. And we think that
Mm.
ball is always going to come out of the water. So if I have to stuff and stifle and put those things aside to be externally successful, that ball, it's going to come out. And our work with people is to try to say, can we can we help you let that ball up slowly so it's splashing as few people as possible?
Hmm. Well, that's good. And I guess that could be a metaphor not just for our own personal qualities, it could actually be for team members. We don't want to
Yeah,
lose them. So we're like stifling their talents and abilities. So
yeah,
another part of this leader being reborn might be allowing your staff, your team members, as they sometimes get
yeah,
called
yeah,
nowadays, to actually rise up above. And if you've been holding them down, ladies and gentlemen, they are at some time, they're going to come flying up, maybe hit you in the
yeah.
chin, and all their potential, that kinetic energy is all gone. Can
Mm.
you talk a little bit about develop that team development, I guess is what that would be?
Yeah, I can certainly take a swing at that. I'm not sure that team development is my wheelhouse, but I think what I would say is this, that what we find when we work with teams is that when a leader is holding people down, or we would say when a leader is putting an artificial lid over people,
Mm,
that is usually based again in some sort of fear, or in some sort of like little t trauma, or some sort of
yeah.
what we would call a threat, that there's a threat to that leader, and that threat is mitigated by putting this lid over either people or a staff or sometimes even a whole organization.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we are cruising through this conversation, we have a comment section. How do you like that
Hey,
for alliteration, ladies and gentlemen? That comment section, we'd love to hear from you. Maybe your horrible or great bosses. I mean, there's obviously got to be a lot of them because they made a couple of movies about bosses that are terrible. So we'd love to hear from you. And Kurt, while people are contemplating a comment, one of them might be, Michael, how do I get in touch with Kurt? So can you share your contact information and how people can get in touch with you?
yeah, the best way to do that is through our website. Our website is brimstonecoachinggroup.com. And we are coaches. We do work with individuals and people, or in groups, I'm sorry. And we offer free, no obligation conversations with myself or my business partner to see if our philosophy of leadership and growth fits the places where our potential clients feel stuck. So people can click on that, make those appointments with us, again, free of charge, no obligation. And all the other links can be found on the website, links to our podcast, to our book, and to other sort of bio information, so people can get a glimpse of who we are and why we do what we do.
Nice. That's good. Now, we hear a lot about authentic leadership,
Yeah.
and it can sound like a buzzword. Some people prefer the word authentic to
Mhm.
vulnerable. And so we've already ticked the box for vulnerability. We might circle
Yeah.
back to that quality, but this authentic leadership, what does thriving and leading out of a place of true wholeness actually look like in a high pressure, high expectation environment?
Yeah. Two things, I think, Michael. One is regulation. And I know even that's kind of a buzzword, but we would say that our truest selves, as God made us to be, are found in moments where we're regulated, where we're not anxious,
Mm,
where we're accessing our best thinking, where we are capable of being present in the moment. So that'd be the first thing,
mhm,
regulated. But here's the other thing: we think about authenticity like this. That authenticity is a greater and greater alignment with who and how we've decided we want to be. A lot of people think about authenticity as this sort of posture that says, "This is who I am. Take me or leave me." Maybe Michael, maybe I'm going to bite your head off in this podcast. I probably won't.
it could happen.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'll see how it goes.
Some people would say, well, that's just who Kurt is, take me or leave me.
Yeah,
I actually
right.
don't think that that's my authentic self. I don't think that's my truest self. I don't think that's who I'm created to be, because that's being dysregulated. So if a leader can lead from a place of saying, I'm regulated. I have control of my emotions. I have control of how I'm
Mm.
thinking, but then also then have a crystal clear thought process to say, this is who I want to be and this is how I want to be. And I'm taking steps towards that. Those are two pieces for me that are so vital in thinking about what authentic leadership actually is.
Oh, that's good. And I will have to say thank you for mentioning the bite your head off comment, because for some reason, and this is coming up not only because you mentioned that, but maybe 2 weeks ago, my wife and I, we were just talking about something, and all of a sudden I had this
Mm,
memory of this extremely unpleasant lady who was running this company after the main partner had passed away, and they were scrambling, and they put this woman that nobody really
mm.
liked into this position. And it was a college job for me. You thank the good Lord himself I did not have to stay there. So obviously there was stuff going on, and there's one little piece. It was a cabinet shop, and the installers would always take the small packages with them so they didn't get
Mm.
missed. Well, the installer had just been there. I was loading up the truck with the rest of the cube van and the parts for this
Yeah.
house, and I had, you know, I would say that I have really good spatial recognition. So I was like packing things and checking things off the list. I had no idea the guy did not bring this tiny little filler block with him. And so, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that I missed it or anything. A day or two later, in walks who I might have said the Wicked Witch of the West at the
Wow.
time, and in front of everyone, tears at least
uh,
2 strips off my
uh-huh.
back. She just happened to find this little block, and she was like holding it and like waving it in my face. And I was like, oh man, like when does summer end and when does semester begin?
Uh-huh.
And so there's been a few other people that have picked me as a target
Mm,
to do this in my upbringing, and it was great. Terrible at the time, but great because of the lessons I learned of how to be a leader
yeah.
and not be that kind of person. And so, do you find leaders that come to you that might still have an experience like that, where that fear could still rear its ugly head of those instances of bosses putting a target on your back?
Yeah, 100%. Because I think those fears, they just hang on, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
those are at least little T trauma moments, sometimes even big T
Hmm.
trauma, right?
Yeah. It felt pretty big T at the
Yeah,
time, let
yeah.
me tell you.
Yeah, what we find, there's some data. Harvard Business Journal did a report that said 15% of Americans, but I'm guessing it's the same throughout North America.
Hmm.
15%
Yeah.
said that they consider themselves self-aware, which means 85% of
Wow.
people probably have no idea that, what they're doing is a response to that fear that I got lit up by this boss one time.
Mm.
So
Mm.
yeah, I mean, the short answer is so many people. I have a client who had something really embarrassing happen to her in middle school, deeply embarrassing, to where like classmates would laugh,
Wow.
parents would laugh.
Okay.
Probably not, again, not a big T trauma moment, not a catastrophic life changing moment, but in the grand scheme of things, it was a little T embarrassing. She as an adult would walk into board meetings with other leaders, as a 40-year-old adult, and that fear of being embarrassed was just present all the time. She didn't know it,
Mm.
right? She wasn't present to it. She didn't know why she was doing what she was doing. She would have said, this is just who I am, right? She would have said, this is what it means to be a leader. These are the things I have to navigate if I want to lead well. And what we want to say to her and other clients is, I don't think so. I don't think you have to lead like that. I think there's a way to disconnect leadership from the fear of being embarrassed. While there's always a fear of being embarrassed around people, it is certainly different than that middle school experience. It
Mhm.
doesn't 40-year-old client of mine doesn't need the same sort of protection today.
Mhm. Yes. And part of this, could this be then the source of the inner critic that is in us, and how do we like squelch that inner critic, or say, you know what, I'm leaving you at home today. You get a day off.
Yeah, I actually really like how you say that, Michael. We will, as internal family systems practitioners, we will say like it is helpful to say to our inner critic, take the day off, and that's oversimplistic, right? But there is value in being able to literally communicate and say, I don't need you today. I think the source of the inner critic is always intriguing to me because I think sometimes the inner critic is helping us. I actually think all the time the inner critic is trying to help us. I don't think the inner critic is necessarily malicious as much as I think our response to it is less than fruitful. We would, with a faith background, we would agree probably that guilt sometimes can be empowering to say guilt can lead to repentance and forgiveness and grace and all this stuff. The inner critic is similar sometimes. Sometimes the inner critic is alerting us to say, okay, I probably need to learn more about X, Y, or Z. I probably need to sharpen my skills in a certain area. The question we try to ask is not how do we get rid of it? The question is how do we respond to it? And that goes back again to this sort of self-awareness work, to understand our triggers and anxiety, to understand our fears and our protection mechanisms, so that when that inner critic pops up, we can ask questions like, what am I afraid of right now? Is there something I need to learn? Is there a threat in front of me? And then hopefully then we can use that inner critic to either make us better and motivate us to learn and grow, or exactly like you said, we can say, you know what, I don't need you right now. This is at the risk of sounding cliche, this is a safe space. There's no threat. I don't need you right now.
Right. Yeah, it's not the venue,
Yeah.
inner critic.
Yeah.
It's not the venue.
100%.
So, as a certified, no, I'll just say IFS, you can fill in the acronyms. You're a practitioner of that. You view the mind then as not a single entity, but as a system of different parts.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense in this conversation that we're having, because we're talking about parts.
Yeah.
And so then for a leader who has never heard of IFS, how does understanding these internal parts help them manage the self-doubt?
Yeah. So here's how it's been so helpful for me. And I'll maybe just answer that for me. We know as IFS practitioners, we know that part of this theory is that, that when anxiety rises or a threat is present, we have parts of us that get into action to try to mitigate that and try to keep us from pain and keep us from discomfort and keep us from hardship. Those parts of us always mean well, but sometimes come out sideways or come out when we don't need them. So I think the real benefit is understanding that those things that I feel, they're not because I'm a bad leader, right? They're not because I'm bad at my job. They're not because I'm weak, right? They're because I'm human, and they are parts that are working for my good, that I can integrate into one whole self to be whole, instead of these kind of broken up parts where one part feels like they have to jump in and say, danger, ignore this, go around this, whatever it is. I think that feels so different to me, that I can integrate parts that feel so different than like, well, I guess I'm just a bad leader because I feel doubt, right? Having that path forward to say, I can integrate parts feels so much different to me.
You have the unique approach of what could look like an algebraic equation of encounter plus reflection equals transformation. Can you break down what an encounter means in the daily life of a busy entrepreneur?
Yeah, 100%. And I hate math, Michael. So I don't know why we did a.
Oh, good. Me too.
I don't know why we did a math equation, but yeah. So an encounter is any experience or situation where we feel shocked or surprised, or we get kind of knocked off our path or our rails or whatever it is, where we might react instead of responding. So for a busy entrepreneur, we work with some small business owners. An encounter for a small business owner might be a customer that comes in and says, I bought this thing yesterday and it doesn't work. Give me back my money right now. That is an encounter where like we just get into action, often without our best thinking. Often we just respond and react out of an autopilot behavior. Those are encounters. And we would say that we have dozens of them every day. Maybe it's the car that cuts us off in traffic. Maybe it's the email that's difficult, we don't know what to do with. Those are encounters that shock us or surprise us. Then we think the closest thing to a silver bullet to transformation that we can offer is to use the practice of reflection, to have the encounter, then at some point in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, pause, get to a quiet space, get a pen and paper, and ask some intentional, simple questions to say, in that encounter, what happened? Who was involved? What emotions did I feel? What did I do? And what would I like to do differently the next time that encounter happens? Because it will. So we think with having an encounter and reflecting that will ultimately lead to transformation. Maybe not the next time,
Hmm.
but over the course of time,
Yeah.
that practice will lead to transformation.
Yeah. It sounds a lot like having to unlearn behaviors.
Yes. Yes.
We've done it this way. I've done it this way for so long. Now I have to be nice to these people.
Yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I've worked with high performers. Some I liked, some I did not. And I found that, well, we all have different personalities, and it would seem like their personalities were obsessed with action. And that could lead to
Yeah.
burnout because they think maybe their identity is wrapped up in their
Yeah.
action. And so, do these then leaders then need maybe to create some space or some time for reflection? Can you talk a little bit about maybe they need a different way to define their return on investment or their
Yeah.
capacity?
100%. So we would say it like this, that systems get the results they're designed to get. So if I'm
Mm,
a leader or an entrepreneur and I'm not happy with the results, I have to do something different or I'll just keep getting the same results. And we think about
mhm.
reflection being one of those things that we can do differently. So if I'm going to just keep going through my day, keep having these encounters, not love how I show up in them, but I'm not going to do anything to like make them different, then I'm just going
Yeah.
to keep getting the same results. So we invite people. We also know how hard reflection is. My partner and I, we've done this for better part of a decade, and reflection is different for people. It's sort of counterintuitive to think about slowing down. Like you said, we have this fascination with being in action. So we invite our clients to say, if you have never tried reflection, try it for like 3 minutes. Like maybe at lunch, maybe put it in your calendar. Just put like 3 to 5 minutes. Try it. Start somewhere and see what happens when we can start to be aware of those parts in our day where we're maybe not showing up the way we want. But yes, there's going to have to be some unlearning of things and some courageous steps to say, when I feel like I need to be in action, I am going to try something different for the sake of getting different results.
Right. And oftentimes we can see, speaking of the word reflection, the leadership's mindset of if how they show up for the people is actually how their staff is going to show up. And what I think an epidemic that's probably in a lot of cubicle companies is that people will silo themselves and have lunch at their desk.
Yeah.
And that almost seems to me to be a reflection of the boss's detachment from building community. Can you talk about the importance of leadership ensuring that community is being built amongst the worker bees?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, worker bees caught me off guard there. That was a
Yeah.
real chuckle, Michael.
I was thinking of colony, community, bees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, this is one of the places that is ultimately the leader's responsibility. Like culture is the responsibility of the leader. Now, I think culture gets built by every level of an organization and affirmed, but
Mhm.
ultimately the leader decides what the culture is. I can't say enough how important I think it is to model things like rest or reflection or community. um, I have a lot of introverted friends that are running through my head right now saying, "Don't make me be in
Yeah.
community with other people." So I'm
Yeah.
not sure that I'm really clear on how to like create community when there's such different perspectives. But here's what I will say about
Mhm.
culture and creating culture and community. I worked one of the churches that I served. I was in pastoral ministry for a portion of my career. The lead pastor at this church that I served had a practice that said the entire staff, one morning of every month, the first Tuesday of every month for the whole morning, it is a solitude morning. No work,
Mm.
no interoffice communication. It is a do what you need to do, and it looks different for everybody. Some people go for a walk, some people listen to a podcast. Whatever it is, it's built in. It's expected that everyone is going to be unplugged for that entire morning. It's everybody's getting paid, everybody's being compensated. This is not an unpaid thing. This is a culture driven. This is who we are. And I got to tell you, Michael, like we all have a hard time with it because we all have stuff to get done. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it builds in the idea of this is what's important to us, right? So
Right.
whether it's
That's
that
good.
sort of solitude, reflection, or rest, or like actual community, social community, what a leader thinks is important will shine through in how they build time together, how they structure a physical office. All of those things will be communicated one way or another. The question is like, how do we want to communicate it? And what's important to the leader?
Hmm. Well, that's really good. That would be a great Tuesday morning to go for a motorcycle ride or go to the
Yeah,
gym or something like that where you can just
yeah.
disconnect. When a client comes to you completely stuck, and maybe it's because they're not instituting this Tuesday morning for 4 hours, quiet time, they're losing momentum. Maybe they're drowning in frustration, a little bit of both. How do you use the E plus R equals T framework to pinpoint precisely where that bottleneck is?
Yeah, that's a great question. We invite our clients to use that E plus R equals T in places where they feel regret or remorse. And
Hmm.
those are strong words. I know how strong those sound, but we think about it like this: that there are times where we leave a meeting or a hard conversation, and we think, I wish I would have said something different, or I wish I wouldn't have said that, or why did I clam up, or why did I defer? Whatever it is, we start there. For someone who has no self awareness or low self awareness, and who has not started any of this work for themselves, that's a really easy place. Well, it's not easy. It's simple, but it's complex. It's a simple place to start because those moments indicate that there's misalignment with how I've shown up and how I want to show up.
Yeah. Wow. That's a powerful time, and it really even gives me the idea of how important reflection is. And I suppose that perhaps there's someone listening and they think they have zero time to spare. What does an effective or a place to start actionable spot maybe for daily reflection practice actually look like?
Yeah, I've got an easy one, Michael. I say it's easy, but
Okay.
it's not as easy probably as I'm making it. I love a good podcast. I love a good baseball game on the radio. I love music.
Mm,
But if
yeah.
I'm gonna get in my car, and if I'm having a hard time finding space for reflection, if I get in my car and I know I'm doing a round trip, maybe it's even just 10 or 15-minute round trip, I will take one of those trips, and just keep the radio off, and use that as a space to reflect on my day, to reflect on those moments of regret or remorse. And that's space that I'm not having to create. I just have to shut my podcast off. I just have to turn the radio off.
Hmm.
So I think that's a
Yeah.
quick, easy first step that doesn't even have to carve out any time in our calendar. We just have to shut that radio off.
Hmm. Yeah, being very intentional about what's coming into our various
Hmm.
gates,
I
the
like that.
eye gate and the ear
Yeah.
gate and things like that. That's good. Sometimes we have to shut those gates and, and keep those things out. Now we're talking about gates, but sometimes people have holes in their fences.
Mm.
I think of the story of Samson where he tied the torches to the little foxes. And so some of us may close our gates, but we've got
Mm.
holes in the fences we didn't realize. Is there a parallel that you could talk to that business leader about? And maybe he doesn't realize where the foxes are coming from. He's closed the gates and I'm still having this
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. I think many of us, myself included, a lot of blind spots that we don't know about. We think
Hmm.
about the things that we know, right? If I could graph with a pie chart knowledge, things there are to know, I would have a really little sliver that are things that I know. I would have a really little sliver of things that I don't know. But then the
Hmm.
biggest part of that pie chart would be things that I don't know that I don't know. And I think many of us as leaders, like that things that we don't know is huge because we're finite. No, it's not because anybody's ignorant or a bad leader. There's just so much to know. So I think the parallel there is that uh, the entrepreneur listen, most of us as leaders just think that we know a lot more than we know. that our ability to learn and grow is smaller than it actually is. I think
Mhm.
so many of us, if we could find a way to assume that posture of curiosity and humility, that we could find those sort of tie in the lights to the animals. I think we could find those much easier if
Mhm.
we could find that curiosity and that humility just a little bit more every day.
Right. Yeah. And so as we're wrapping up, this has been one for the record books. Great conversation, Kurt. And you're just in that answer of you talking about not trying to find out what we don't know. And there's just so
Yeah.
much to know, but there's got to be an internal truth or some sort of firm point that we could anchor ourselves to, that leaders and their staff could anchor themselves to before they step into the chaos of the
Yeah.
office. How do they, how do they come to terms with what that anchor point is or developing a strong foundation on which to face their day from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, certainly, like my partner and I, we are ordained ministers. We believe that our work is kind of founded in the idea that God created us for shalom, and that we find our truest self in Jesus.
Mhm.
We work with a lot of people who are not coming at this from a faith tradition or faith background. I think the sort of grounded truth that we like to help people understand is that we are ridiculously in charge of the way we show up.
Yeah.
That the only thing I can control in my workplace, in my life, and my leadership is me. Now, does that mean I do it
Mhm.
perfectly all the time? No. But if I'm going to step into the chaos is going to chaos, right? The workplace is going to do what the workplace does. But if we can help people understand that black and white, 100% true, that I am ridiculously in charge of my own self, that is a great place to start and a great place to enter in a
Mhm.
space controlling what I can control.
Yes. Well, Kurt, I don't know if there's a better way we could end off this conversation, but thank you so much for being with me here on the 5 a.m. podcast
Yeah,
today.
thanks so much for having me. This was great.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you're listening, we're wrapping up, but you might be a leader or an entrepreneur or you're a professional who's been quietly doing the fake it till you make it thing. And today's episode just might be a wake up call that you were looking for. Nobody likes how annoying those wake up calls can be. So, hopefully, this was a nice, soft, gentle wake up call for you. Success doesn't have to feel hollow, and leadership doesn't have to mean exhaustion or ruling with that stick. And it's time to move past the performance and then to step into actual wholeness. So if you're ready to get unstuck or to drop the stick in the carrot act and build that true self-awareness, you can work directly with Kurt to unlock your leadership capacity. You can go right now if you have time. Not if you're driving, 10 and 2 people, but later after you shut the car off. You can actually take action right now. You can head over to brimstonecoachinggroup.com/1-1 coaching. We'll have that in the show notes as well. You can explore their transformational coaching programs. You can take the first step towards leading authentically. And as we always say, when we seize our days, we seize our futures. So please get out, enjoy those sunrises and sunsets and all those beautiful adventures in between. I'm Michael Clausen, and I will see you on the next 5 a.m. podcast. Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com.